Well, hello, friends, and welcome back to another episode of The Sweet House. I have with me my friend Nicole Renard. And we actually just met, but she is my soul sister. We met 1 week ago, like today, and we went to lunch at Greenery & Co., and we just had this spiritual connection that I just was like, I needed every bit of your soul today. Like, we are both influencers. Nicole is an incredible influencer who travels the world. She's known as a smoothie bowl girl. And she has made every kind of smoothie bowl from the Taylor Swift smoothie bowl. Mm-hmm. Tell them about that. Like, that was a really cool one. It was actually beautiful. And the Taylor Swift smoothie bowl actually looked like it was going to the concert.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, I was getting FOMO from seeing all of my friends going to the Taylor Swift concert, and I did not buy tickets, and so I missed out. But every time I opened Instagram, it was another post on someone at one of her shows, and so I thought I'll do a series of smoothie bowls inspired by the covers of all of her albums. So we're doing an Eras series right now, and we've done Midnight, Red, Speak Now, and one other one. Oh, I did Lover the other day. I haven't posted it yet, but it's been so fun.
We can't wait to fall in love with Lover, because all the rest of them have been fabulous.
Thank you.
And you got to catch a tour date. Like, what are you waiting on?
I know. See, I tried. I thought I got lucky, but I got scammed into buying tickets for what I thought would be in the New Jersey show. And I was going to surprise my boyfriend with these tickets. Turned out I got scammed into $600. But
how did that happen?
I'm hoping that Taylor sees one of the bowls and invites me to one of her shows so I can make her a smoothie bowl live backstage. I think that would be so fun.
That's how you do true influencer life.
So Taylor, if you're watching or listening right now,
I hope so. Look, Taylor, if you're watching The Sweet House, I am truly honored.
You never know. Yes. You never know.
You never know. And next time you're in Nashville, you have to have Nicole and I come backstage so she can make you a smoothie bowl and I can interview you. So yes,
that'd be awesome.
You have been traveling all over the place and making smoothie bowls and building this incredible influencer career for a few years now, but it didn't start just like a few years ago. You started doing pageants. Like, how old were you when you started doing pageants?
Gosh, I did my first pageant when I was in 5th grade. I think I was 9.
Yeah.
So the pageant world was about 10 years of my life. It was a lot of my high school and college growing up, and I also was a competitive dancer. So I danced and did pageants, and I competed in Miss America in 2017. And so that kind of ended my pageant career, but it was a big part of my life.
How did it feel when you ended your pageant career? Because I know it's like, for some of us, we age out. For some of us, you hit the last crown and that's over.
Yeah.
And then you're kind of trying to figure out what is next. And so how did that feel? Did that spark any other feelings or career aspirations in you?
Oh, that's a layered answer for me. In one way, it was refreshing. I'd been competing for so long. It was just refreshing, almost like a sigh of relief to be done and have ended on such a high note at Miss America. That was one of my biggest dreams I had since I was little.
Yeah.
But in a way, I feel like I had an identity crisis because for the last 10 years of my life and a huge part of my childhood, that's all I had ever known. I'd always had a title. I'd always been competing for something. I was always working towards some goal or achievement. And so to be done with that was a little scary because not that I had placed all my worth and value in those things. I knew my identity didn't lie in those titles, but it's really hard when you're in the thick of it to remember that. And when it was all done and it was all taken away, I was like, I was left with that question of who am I? And am I still worthy and still loved and still valued, even though I don't have a crown on my head? Because I had put a lot of worth in those things. And so when it was done, I had to do a lot of soul searching and a lot of digging deep to really figure out what my purpose was and who I was, and know that that wasn't tied to a title.
Yeah, I definitely feel like you're constantly working towards the crown and the title and all the affirmation that comes with it. And when it is over, you are like, what's next? And even for me, I remember I aged out. So by then it's just, well, what do I do next? Because you have been competing since you were so young. I started competing when I was 4. Actually, Nicole and I both did National American Miss pageants, which are great pageants to train you to do exactly what we're doing now, influencer life and just facing the world. They say pageants mirror life. life. And it's true. Don't you think so? With a lot of the things that you faced, all of the skill sets that you were able to pick up have helped you through different things in your life?
Absolutely. The only pageants I ever did were the ones that were either scholarship based or the ones that prepared you with life skills, learning how to interview for a job, speaking in public. For when I was younger, learning how to make friends and learning how to walk into a room full of people that you don't know and be able to introduce yourself and have a conversation. Yeah. Those things that I learned at a very young age, I didn't even realize at the time were going to set me up for my future and help me get a job. But Sam Haskell always said, pageants don't only help you win a crown, they help you win at life. And I think that's so good because there were many titles that I won, but there were also titles I didn't win. For example, I did not become Miss America. Yeah. However, the things that were instilled in me that I did learn and gain from competing are invaluable. And they're things that I'm still using today in my life. And I never was Miss America.
Well, you became a famous TikToker. Nicole is and I say famous in all caps, underlined, bold, italics marks, all the above, because you have 1 million followers on TikTok and you are just killing it. And YouTube, all across social media, you are killing it. So how did that come about? Did you ever foresee yourself becoming an influencer throughout all of your pageantry training and competing?
I didn't. However, it's funny because when I competed at Miss America, back then it was on ABC and Dick Clark Productions produced the show. And so when we got to Atlantic City, they reached out to us and told us that we all needed to create a Musical.ly account and be posting on it every single day while we were at Miss America. This was before Musical.ly became TikTok.
Did they not take you guys' phones? I feel like back in the day, they used to take your phones.
They did take our phones. And so all of us were so confused. We're like, how are we going to create Musical.ly videos if we don't have our phones? And I was one of the only contestants who was able to figure it out. And we weren't allowed to film in our hotel rooms, but I would go behind the curtain where the windows were, and I would position myself between the window and the curtain so you couldn't see anything in our hotel room because we weren't allowed to film. And I would make these funny Musical.ly videos, and I had fun with it for what I could do during the time I had my phone. But after Miss America, I didn't keep up with it, and I wish I would have, because then TikTok bought Musical.ly and it became TikTok. But who knows what it would have been like had I just kept going on with those videos. But I stopped doing it and didn't come back to it until
the training and the experience.
Somewhat. I wouldn't say it was anything that made a difference for what I'm doing now, but I re-downloaded TikTok right before the pandemic, and so I did get a head start in terms of I had been posting for about 4 or 5 months before the pandemic hit. However, I honestly thought that I would enter this space because I was Miss America. I was like, maybe if this happens for me, that will start to open doors and I'll maybe gather a following because of that. But then I didn't become Miss America, so I had to kind of figure out a different game plan. And honestly, for a few years after I gave up my title as Miss Washington, I didn't know what the heck I was doing. I was living in LA. I was barely surviving in the city. I wasn't making any money because I was freelancing. I didn't have a job. I was just doing photography, acting, graphic design, literally anything I could do to make money, and it was barely enough. And so about 2.5 years into that, I decided that I was going to give up on the YouTube dream because it just wasn't working. I didn't have a following. I was spending so much time and nothing was working. So I had decided to be done. And then about 2 weeks before the pandemic, I just felt this nudge to lean into food. And I cannot explain it, but everywhere I looked, the word food just kept popping up. And I had been testing a smoothie bowl series on my YouTube channel right when the pandemic hit. So I started posting the videos on TikTok as well. And almost overnight, they blew up. And so my account went from 0 to 1 million in about 4.5 months. And then it went from 1 million to 2 million in the next 6 months. And all of a sudden, I'm doing it full time. So it really caught me off guard.
Well, yeah, that totally. You wake up to all these notifications that you're like, now.
And for smoothies. I mean, I never dreamed it would be for recipes and food and snacks and smoothie bowls. It was just so different from what I had thought I would do in life, and I love it. It's just not what I planned for.
Well, I am curious to see what your thoughts are, because when you compete for pageants, it is a lot of work. You're doing public speaking training, you are doing interview training behind the scenes, you are training in the gym, you're doing all sorts of things to prepare for pageants for years, sometimes to get on that stage for 5 minutes in a swimsuit or 5 minutes to do like evening gown or what have you. But with TikTok, it's like you're testing out smoothie bowls, and then in 4 months you become this international phenomenon. So how does that make you feel for, like, I mean, what are your thoughts around the work, the time and the work that it took you to get on stage to compete for Miss America versus making smoothie bowls and becoming this awesome TikToker overnight that's able to have this huge platform.
Yeah.
Are they
I think it's just that. I think that it's not overnight. All of that was preparation. All of those years and hours and work that I put into competing for dance competitions or pageants or my schoolwork, whatever it was, all of that was laying a foundation. It was all setting me up for this moment. And not even to say that this is the final destination. I don't think that this is it. I think this is a launching pad for what God is doing in the next season of my life. But I think everywhere you are has purpose because it's preparing you for what's next. It's setting you up for what's coming because God doesn't waste any season. And so I think all those things that I learned growing up that I'm putting into practice now, whether it's on camera skills or being able to say yes to a speaking event because I'm not afraid to grab a microphone and get up on stage and encourage a group of people. All of those things are preparation for what's coming because God gives you the tools that you need. And you might not even realize it at the time, but I think that even encourages me to remember that even though it might feel like nothing's happening in this current season, it's setting me up for what is coming.
So that's why I fell in love with Nicole when we went to lunch last week, because that is exactly what she said to me when we sat down for lunch. And it's just so wild because your conviction about it all is so strong, and it's what people need to hear. And they also need to see that. Like you even talked about giving up on YouTube. And so we all have those feelings of doubt. Done. Exactly. As content creators, a lot of times it can feel like, well, I'm just done. Like I'm constantly putting out this content. Like, what do I do next? And for you, you're so multifaceted. So my next question is, how did you decide? I know you said you kept seeing and hearing the word food over and over again, but even now, how do you decide what kind of content you want to put out to the world? Because you travel and you just have so many things to talk about and so many cool things that you've done in your life. So how do you choose what topic of discussion is going to serve your audience the best?
Yeah, there's a lot of different ways and strategies and things that you can do based on, polling your audience, seeing what works, going with what's trending. But for me, honestly, I pray about it. It's the first thing I do. I let the Holy Spirit lead because there's so much on social media and it's so saturated that I don't want to just add to the noise. I know that my story is so unique that I literally can point to nothing but Jesus because that's the only way it happened. And so if the Lord gave me this platform, I want to steward that well. And I want everything I post to be led by the Holy Spirit, or else I don't want to post it. So I just ask, I'm like, Lord, what would you have me post today? Please give me creative ideas, give me thoughts and fun things to do. And then I go based on like what brings me joy, what sounds fun, what do I think is going to leave people with a smile on their face. And it doesn't have to be that serious. I mean, sometimes it's do something fun, create a fun, colorful smoothie and add some fun fruit on the top. It doesn't have to be super deep. Sometimes it is, but that's where I start because faith is such a big part of my life. But I also do the other things too, like look at what's working and look at what's, seasonal, what's trending. But I think at the end of the day, especially with social media, it's social media. It should be fun. It doesn't need to be that serious. And so if I'm not having fun doing it, it's not worth it. And I enjoy storytelling. I enjoy creating. And so I'm always trying to challenge myself to just try something new. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's not that big of a deal. Try something else the next day.
So I know when we sat down for lunch, you talked about like wanting to open a smoothie bowl bar and just doing other things with your life. Do you feel like your life as an influencer has like fostered all of these other interests that you want to, or all these other ambitions that you want to do?
Oh, absolutely. I would have never dreamed of opening a smoothie shop had what I was doing on TikTok and YouTube not been about smoothies. And so I think it's cool too that like that has birthed other dreams and it's planted seeds for other things in my life that I never even imagined when I was in high school or college. I don't know what that looks like though. I mean, I'm really good at making videos. I'm really good at what I do now. I'm not great at the other stuff. So I'm interested to see what these next seasons look like as I step into new territories that I'm so unfamiliar with and feel very unqualified for because I'm excited about them. What makes you feel
unqualified for this?
Girl, I don't know how to open a smoothie shop. I'm like, I can make the smoothies, but I don't know if anybody's going to come.
Oh, girl, all million TikTok followers are going to come and the YouTubers and everything. I don't know how to make a smoothie bowl. I can make you a smoothie. Oh, girl, I tried to make Rain a smoothie and she spit it out on the floor. She was like, I am not drinking that, Mom. So next time you're in town, when you're not in Egypt or Africa or wherever, I need you to like come make Rain some smoothies.
Absolutely.
I don't do a good job at smoothie life. I'm like, I need to start watching some of your videos and figure this out. So you've been in Nashville for 2 years, and Nashville, according to an article I recently read, is becoming like a major influencer hub over LA and New York, which I found interesting because I've been in Nashville for 7 years, born and raised in Tennessee, and the influencer community in Nashville is very small to me. I feel like I know most of the people, and some of us even call ourselves the OG bloggers of Nashville because the community was so small that like we did everything together. So I'm just wondering, what are your thoughts on being in the influencer hub, one of the top 3 influencer hubs, especially with you coming from LA?
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on being in Nashville? Have you found your community?
Yeah. That's interesting you say that because I would have never thought that.
Me either.
When I lived in LA, I mean, you can hit a stick. You can throw a stick and hit an influencer. They're everywhere. It's like everybody you meet practically has a K next to their name and their following.
Yeah.
Here, not as much, but me moving here really had nothing to do with that. Nashville has always been on my radar as somewhere where I wanted to end up. Ever since I was a little girl, I thought, you know, when I get married and have a family, I want to end up in Nashville.
Yeah.
I just didn't know when that was or what would bring me here. I, at the time, genuinely thought it would be when I got married. And so it kind of was a random thing. I woke up in the middle of the night and felt it on my heart that I was supposed to move, and I could not explain it, but all arrows were pointing to Nashville.
And this was during the pandemic, right?
It was right after. So it was like January of 2021. We had gone through the full year almost of the pandemic, and we're kind of coming out of it. And I pretty much 3 or 4 months later packed up my bags and drove out here. So I've been here. I did. I packed up all my stuff. We had a moving truck, and then we put everything else in an RV. And my dad and I drove this RV across the country, and we camped along the way and kind of made a vlog out of it. It was so fun.
So were you doing travel blogging before then?
That's actually what I started with. So in college, I realized I was spending more time making a list of the things I wanted to do instead of actually doing them. And I thought, man, that's lame. I don't want to be like that. I want to be the girl that when I say I'm going to do something, I actually do it. And I keep myself accountable to my word. And so I started a blog at the time. It was called the Do Stuff blog. And I would do the stuff on the list. And every time I'd check something off, I would write about it. And so at the time I was traveling a ton. I was never in one place for longer than 2 or 3 weeks. And I I visited 9 countries that year. So I started this blog about travel and where I was going and what I was experiencing, and decided about 2 years later to change the name to Nicole the Nomad because I was just all over the place all the time. And I was also working as a pastry chef in a commercial kitchen for about 3.5, 4 years.
So that's where the bowl stuff goes.
Mostly pastries, baked goods and pastries. I was posting recipes on the blog as well. So it was travel and food for a little bit. And I didn't start the smoothie bowls until 2019. I did one tutorial on my YouTube channel because I liked to make them living in California. And it did really well. It was like the only video on my channel that had any sort of views. So when the pandemic hit and I was about ready to give up, I decided to do a series of smoothie bowl tutorials to see if it would work. And it did. So the smoothie bowls was honestly random, but I had been doing like travel blogging up until that point. But then the pandemic hit and I couldn't travel. So all my travels came to a halt and all I could do was food. So once everything opened back up, I started implementing the travel stuff back into what I'm doing. So now it's travel, food, lifestyle.
How often would you say you travel?
It depends on the season. Right now, I've been traveling almost every weekend. When I first moved here, I wasn't traveling that much because I really wanted to focus on building community and getting my roots planted here in Nashville. But some seasons are definitely busier than others. It's the beauty of this job is it's very unpredictable and always changing.
Yeah, and because opportunities will come to you and then you can go embark on those opportunities. Like you're getting ready to head to Disney.
Yes, tomorrow morning, bright and early.
Yeah. So do you feel like you found your community of influencer friends in Nashville?
Not as much. I think I don't know as many food creators here. There's a lot of bloggers. There's a lot of Instagram fashion bloggers. In terms of like food TikTokers and YouTubers, there's not as many. Yeah. So I have a lot of friends in the industry and in the space, but not as many that do what I do.
I feel like you have a unique spin on it though, because a lot of them are showcasing restaurants around town. And that's a different spin from what you're doing, where you're actually creating these unique bowls
in the kitchen.
You don't want me in the kitchen at all for any of that. Like I said, I mean, even you working in the pastry shop, oh no, they would put me out, even though my name is Mrs. Sweet. They don't want me in the kitchen. I can make salmon. I can make a sweet potato in the microwave. Hey, I'm good at that kind of stuff.
Chicken ding.
Yeah.
Put chicken in the microwave, wait till it dings. That was my college special.
Look, that is not my talent. It's not I can cook. It's not my ministry. Put it that way.
Hey, we all know our lanes.
Exactly. Well, I do feel like Nashville has such a fun, creative community. Even the entrepreneur community is really cool. So, and there are lots of people moving from LA. So what are your thoughts on welcoming all these people coming from LA? They came with you in the RV.
I know. I feel like everybody followed me. It's funny, when I lived in LA, I didn't leave because of the pandemic. Genuinely, I felt it on my heart that I needed to move to Nashville, and it had nothing to do with COVID. I wanted to stay. But there was a mass exodus. A lot of people left LA, and they either went to Texas, Florida, Nashville, and I happened to be one of them on the tail end of that.
Yeah. And people coming from New York too. I think the cost of living, I did read something about the taxes were really getting people as far as, especially entrepreneurs wanting to find a life without having to pay all this money. So,
and honestly, the quality of life, one of the things that really appealed to me about Nashville over LA was the pace of life. It's much slower. It's much healthier. The sense of community is so different here. Not saying that you can't find good people in LA, but it's much harder to find people that want more for you than from you. Yeah. And I felt like it was very transactional in LA versus here. It's so relational, and people actually want you to win, and they want to help, and they'll cheer you on and support you. Whereas LA, there's a lot of ladder climbing and clout chasing. And again, I'm not trying to stereotype in any way, because there are some lovely people in LA who I love dearly. Yeah. But I think the reality, it was hard for me to find community there. And here, the pace of life and the lifestyle is much healthier.
Yeah. And the reality is, it's definitely an industry that's like very competitive and once in a lifetime opportunities. And so I think the culture just in general is probably much different. Whereas in Nashville, things are slower, and people are willing to like work with you through whatever your talent is. Yes. You can find vocal lessons, you can find acting lessons, you can find modeling lessons where they're actually invested in like helping you become better at your craft.
Totally.
So,
because it's not so saturated either.
Yeah, not yet, but they say it's growing.
I know, it makes
when I read
me
that
nervous.
article, I was actually kind of shocked about it.
Yeah.
So that Nashville was a top influencer hub. I feel like I see the same people at every event. So but Nicole was like a breath of fresh air. And so when we went to lunch last week, I was like, you have to come to the Sweet House because you have a whole different worldview perspective on everything. So I'm curious to know, so you've been doing influencer stuff as a business for how long now?
Full-time, about 3 years.
Yeah. And so I'm curious, what has been your favorite brand partnership?
Ooh, that's tough. It's tough because they're so different. Yeah. There have been companies, and not necessarily big companies, but even smaller companies that I've really loved working with because the campaign was super fun or the way that they treated me was incredible. But it's hard to compare them, truly. I love working with Disney. I've done some really fun trips with Disney, and I grew up as a Disney kid. So those have been pretty exceptional. I loved working with Spotify. One thing that stuck out about them was they treat their creators so well. I mean, they go out of their way to do things that I think sometimes are completely unnecessary, but it just adds an extra level of value that makes me want to do a better job. Like they sent me flowers and cookies on my birthday, and they did not need to do that, but it showed me that they see me as a human first versus just a creator who they can get a video from and take advantage of my audience. Like they really wanted to foster a relationship. So I think companies that do that really set themselves apart, and they create great relationships that creators want to work for them, and they want to do their best job. And it's not just about, you know, pushing their agenda or getting their campaign out, but it's like really working together in a collaborative way. And it's just a great experience overall for everyone.
So if we have any corporate businesses listening to this podcast, I would have to say that that is top line information that they need to hear, because especially with the industry becoming so saturated with so many influencers, I think that they should value their creators more. But that also leads to collaborations that are not just one-time collaborations. Like all of us want to work with brands more than one time.
Yes. And that I honestly think is one of the secrets is like, stop trying to do one-off collaborations. They don't make a difference, and they don't generate sales. It doesn't matter at all. So it's not really helping the company at all. No. But it's just better all around. If you could do a multi-part collaboration or work with a brand more than once, because it establishes loyalty, it establishes trust. If your audience sees you've been posting about the same product or the same company for 3 years, they're going to be like, man, there must be something here. She's been talking about this for forever.
Absolutely. It's like passing by a billboard over and over and over again. The more you see the billboard, you become more familiar with the brand. And I think that social media managers and marketing people have to think of it like that, but also influencers. I will challenge any influencer to not switch from makeup to makeup and from skincare product to skincare product weekly, monthly, or what have you. If you're going to promote something that you truly believe in, I definitely think it needs to be something that you have used for a number of times and you're promoting the same product to your audience a number of times, because it does develop a trust with your audience that is going to drive those sales.
Yes.
But I also want to ask you a question about affiliate sales versus brand deals, because I think people are confused on how influencers make money, and brands are confused on how best to partner with some influencers, because this is a new industry. You've been doing it full time for 3 years. I have been doing it full time for like 5 years, plus doing corporate America. And, I'm just curious to know what your thoughts are on affiliate sales, or just how we make money in general as influencers.
Yeah. I mean, affiliate sales are great if you have an engaged audience who's going to buy what you're selling. Like if you are good at sales and everybody in your audience is going to click every single time you send a link, then that might be for you. Like if you post a link to the shoes you're wearing and you know that your audience is going to really love those and really want those and actually take action to go buy those, you could make a banging buck with affiliate marketing if you know your audience and know what they want. However, if you can't convert, the trouble with affiliate marketing is if that's all that is in your contract, you run the risk of spending all this time and effort creating beautiful content and giving essentially free marketing to a brand or a company. And then if you don't convert, you now don't get paid.
Yeah.
So I never at this point usually never do affiliate only deals. I always have some kind of upfront cost, because at the end of the day, they're paying me for a service. If they weren't hiring me, if influencer marketing didn't exist, they would otherwise be hiring a photographer, a videographer, models, a commercial team, models,
the whole team,
to come in and create a commercial for them to market.
Yeah.
Let's just go back to how it was before influencer marketing became a thing. Companies have a marketing budget to hire these freelancers to come in and create the marketing content. Now they have pushed that aside and they're hiring influencers to create that content for them. So you're playing all the roles. You're writing the script, you're producing, you're filming.
Yes,
we don't always like say it like that, but that's essentially what you're doing.
Yeah.
And then if they're not willing to pay for that and they're saying, oh, it's only commission based, they're asking you to do all of that for free.
Yeah.
And I don't think that's fair when you've worked hard to build up your audience and build their trust and build their loyalty. And if it's your part-time or full-time job, like that is work and a service that you are providing.
And
commissions
no matter
are one
what
thing.
level of following you're at too, I don't care if you've got 10,000 followers.
You're
I don't
still
care if you have 100
creating.
followers. Yeah. You're still creating.
Yeah.
And it costs time and energy and money to be able to output the product that they're asking for.
And for a brand to think that, well, it's only worth it for us if we convert sales, it is not really considerate or fair when you take into consideration what they're asking for.
It's also not realistic amidst the fact that we cannot control this algorithm. So if I make all this beautiful content and then post it on social media and the algorithm doesn't show it, and I'm not able to convert 100 people to buy a pair of shoes in the middle of a recession, I mean, it's not my fault.
It's also, there's risk, and every company should know that when they're doing, if they choose to do influencer marketing or marketing in general, you're always taking a risk.
Yeah.
You're putting money out front, knowing that it might not come back, but you're hoping that if you've chosen the right influencers or if you've chosen the right marketing channels, that it will create a return.
Absolutely.
It won't always, but my team always upfront says, this is a risk. It might work. It might not. This might be incredible. It might not. But at the end of the day, we can guarantee quality content. And that's what I can always promise.
Absolutely. I can always deliver a positive brand that it's coming from, and then also quality content. And I like to say it's like playing the influencer lottery, because you're literally playing the slot machine every time you post. It's like you don't know if the return on investment is going to happen or not. So what we can promise is that we're going to create the content that is beautiful and engaging and captures our audiences versus I can get you X amount of money in sales. It's just not possible. possible to make those promises, for sure. So when did you know you needed management and a team to help you create content and follow through with all the business stuff? Because it's a lot to run all the logistics from as an influencer.
Yeah, I mean, there's only so much you can do on your own. I had to get really serious really quickly about setting boundaries for one, how much I work, because during the pandemic, I was stuck inside, as was everyone else. And I was just work for 13 hours straight, no breaks. And I did that for a couple months and was so drained. I was like, if I don't start setting boundaries, I'm going to burn out, and I don't want that. So I started setting much stricter boundaries on the times that I worked. And I noticed I was spending a lot of time just answering emails and DMs and trying to get back to people that were reaching out for collaborations and sifting through the ones that were actually worth it versus the ones that weren't, and then having to spend time in conversation with these brands and negotiate my own rates and fight for what I thought I was worth. And it just, to me, that exhausts me. That sounds like the last thing I want to do. It makes me want to stab my eyes out with a fork. And so I'm like, okay, if I had somebody who I could just forward all of these emails to, who would handle the conversations for me and fight for me and be like negotiating on my behalf, then I could focus on the creative side and spend more time writing and making videos and telling stories and creating the content that I love. And so at that time, I had reached out to a creator to do a collaboration with him. And he had been in touch with an agency that was putting together a small group of chefs, chef creators. And he was like, this is a new thing. We don't know how it's going to work, but I think you'd be a great addition to this little chef group. And so I talked to the agent, and I was skeptical at first because I've had a lot of agencies reach out and management reach out, and it's just never been something that had, you know, contracts written in the creator's benefit. And so I've always said no, but this one felt good and I had peace about it. And so I just decided to try, and it was probably the best decision I've ever made in my business so far.
Yeah, well, you answered my question, because I've actually talked to quite a few influencers that have switched management agency to agency or just decided to manage themselves. And you definitely answered my question of like, how did you choose to go with this particular agency over all the ones that were like reaching out to you?
The main difference with this one was the contract. The way it was written was basically, if you don't like it, 30-day out. It wasn't like you're signed to 2 years, you owe us your life, we control everything. It was like, hey, we only help you with your social media. Because I was doing acting stuff at the time too. So I was like, if I book stuff that is media related but not social media, like, does that come out of it with the 20% that I'm giving to you? And it was only for social media. And it was, if you're not happy, you have a 30-day out. You sign a paper and then in 30 days you're done. So I didn't feel trapped. I was like, if this doesn't work and if I absolutely hate it,
I can move
I don't
on.
lose anything. Yeah.
And I will say to anybody watching that it is important to read through your contracts beginning to end.
Yes.
Even if you have to have a friend who's the lawyer, or if you can't afford to hire a lawyer, it is so necessary that you read through your contracts, because that is a huge part of influencer life.
And that is another reason why I have them, is they have a lawyer on their team who runs through every single one of my contracts. They redline everything. We go back to the brand and say, this needs to be changed. This needs to be deleted. This exclusivity clause needs to be 30 days versus 90 days, because they save me from potential lawsuits and conflicts I could have with other brand deals that come in the future. Let's say if it's a competing coffee brand, I could get in a lot of trouble if I'm in a deal with Starbucks and then 3 months later, Pete's Coffee comes along and wants to work with me. But in my contract, Starbucks said I can't work with any of these, said people. So I'm thankful that they catch those things, because I would never know.
Yeah.
And
when you don't have the time to figure it out always. Yeah.
Yeah. You don't have time.
Yeah. Yeah. Because she's going to Disney in the morning. So who has time for that? So all she wants to do is, go make beautiful content in Disney and move on to the next collaborations after that. So people look up to you and they aspire to do what you're doing. There are a lot of people who want to be influencers, especially nowadays, because it is the ultimate job. So is it too late for somebody to become an influencer, especially amidst the algorithms constantly changing and the types of content that people want to see constantly changing? We went from still images to straight video in the past year and a half, 2 years that performs best on these platforms. So is it too late for our audience who's watching this to jump into the influencer world?
It's definitely not too late. There's always chance to create, and there's always room for creators. However, I would ask you, why? Why do you want to do it? Because if you don't know why, Or if your why is you just want to get free stuff in the mail and look cool online and be famous and have a following, I would say that's not a reason to start. I would say you shouldn't do it, because I think one thing, a big misconception about this job and about this industry is that it's super fun and glamorous all the time and you just get free stuff in the mail, and it's not. No. It is so fun. Don't get me wrong. I love what I do and I'm so thankful to be in the position that I am.
Absolutely.
But it's a job. Yes. It is a full-time, sometimes more than full-time job that I have to wake up every morning and go to work. And most times I work overtime. I make sacrifices in my life. I pull all-nighters at times. My schedule is never the same. And there are parts about this job that people do not see, that do not get posted on social media, that are really hard. And I think a lot of people aren't willing to do that. They just want to sign up for the fun, glamorous parts of it. And so if your hope is just to be an influencer because it looks cool, I say don't do it. Yeah. Because honestly, you wouldn't want to. It is not for everybody. It is so hard. And if you do not know why or have a purpose driving your why, you won't last. And I don't say that to be discouraging. I say that to encourage you to get really serious and really detailed about why you're doing it. Do you want to, help people with their health? Do you want to give people fashion tips? Like, what value are you adding to the space? Because we don't need more noise.
I love that answer, and I could literally stand up and shout, but I will probably mess up the mic and Aaron will put me out of here. So I'm just going to stay seated, but that is the best answer that I have ever heard when it comes to someone wanting to be an influencer, because I think a lot of people don't know all that goes into it. And it's really complex to explain all that goes into it to people, because I think majority of people think we take pictures for a living and that's it.
Yeah. And that it's so easy.
Yeah. It's not that easy. And just like any other job, you wake up and you have moments where you don't feel like doing it today. I don't want to be on camera today.
Come on.
Yes, but I am still going to show up because this is what I'm committed to. And the message and the drive that I have to do this is much bigger than me just not feeling like it today. So.
Something you said earlier that I was thinking of, which kind of applies to this as well. One thing I've learned, probably the biggest thing I've learned in this job, is that you have to show up every day. The consistency is so much more important than the big milestone moments that happen along the way. Don't get me wrong, those things will come and those things will be there and they'll be so exciting and so fun. But I think what's more important and what separates the creators that last versus the creators that don't are the ones that are consistent and that keep posting when it gets hard and that keep creating when they don't want to and keep showing up day in, day in, day out to do this job even when they don't want to, because it is not always glamorous and fun.
The ones that are constantly evolving too, because as the industry changes and the world changes around us, like the evolution of our content is also necessary too, in order to keep your audience engaged, but also service the new audience members that you're picking up along the way. And across platforms too, the audience that you have on YouTube is not the same audience that you have on TikTok.
Yeah, which is hard.
Yeah, it is hard because then you've got to create content for YouTube. You have to create content for TikTok. And that's not even the editing. That's just the style of content that you have to create across these platforms. So I think there's room for creators to get started. I do.
100%.
But their why is, like I said in the beginning, it has to be bold. It has to be underlined. It has to be italicized. You have to be sure about your why when you want to become an influencer, especially if you want to make an impact on people's lives.
Oh, the hardest thing about it too, I just thought of this, is like, to a certain extent, there's always exceptions to the rule, but to a certain extent, you can't plan on becoming an influencer. It's honestly one of those things that just happens. Yeah. And I think so many people try so hard to just be a blogger and be an influencer, and they try so hard to just build a following and get engagement. And it's like, why don't you just live your life and be authentic? Be authentic with your life and share stories and moments from your life and just be who you are and stop trying to be an influencer. And if it comes, it comes.
Yeah, but that is also what bothers me the most too, is because they are enticed by social media though. Because you see all these people that are, you can become an influencer today. You need to post 3 or 4 times a day on TikTok, and you got to do this and you got to do that.
But influence is an outcome, not a profession. And so when people set out and set it as a goal, as a profession, I think a lot of people end up disappointed because you can't plan for that to happen. I did not plan to go viral. I was just authentically creating recipe videos because I thought it was fun, and then it happened to gain a lot of traction and people liked it. But I think now people see it as like, oh, this is a career that I can just sign up for, and then they get upset when they don't have a following. It's like, well, why would some random girl in Minnesota follow you? Why? Why would she be interested? Why would she randomly find your page and be like, oh, this girl's cool, I'm going to follow her? There has to be something there.
Yeah. I absolutely agree with you 100%. I definitely think that makes complete sense. The creator economy, according to Goldman Sachs, could approach $500 billion by 2027. So there is big money to be made. So I don't fault people for wanting to get into this industry because traditional careers might not provide the same amount of money or opportunity that influencer life is offering people. So what are your thoughts on how we're making money in this current climate and where it's going to go? Because I do think more and more people are going to jump into this world where they see opportunities to make money.
Yeah, man, I don't know. It's wild. And it's funny that this industry really didn't exist 5 years ago. It didn't exist 10 years ago. So it's happening so quickly. But I guess the first thing I think of is my hope is that this generation at the end of the day knows more and is more concerned about their worth and their identity and who they really are versus building a brand and building a brand for themselves. Because I think the conversation now is so much about like, what is your brand? What is your personal brand? Build your personal brand.
It's
that we forget that our identity doesn't lie in that. And then it's creating these mindsets and patterns that are very unhealthy, because when all of that goes away, we have people who feel worthless and like they don't have value, and their mental health goes out the window. And so I think it's just such a fine line that we have to be super careful to make sure that at the end of the day, we know that we are more than who we are as a brand.
I almost feel like the money marketing behind influencers is almost propaganda for more and more people to jump into the industry, because then to a certain extent, it makes it easier for brands to just give their products away for free, because whoever wants to be an influencer is going to post about their products. So then, there's $1 trillion to be made, but it's split amongst so many different realms. It's split amongst providing free product to people. It's split amongst giving people brand deals. It's split amongst traditional marketing. It's split amongst giving celebrity brand deals. We're not the first influencers. Celebrities were doing influencer stuff way before we were doing
OG
it.
influencers.
Yeah, they are the OG influencers. So, but back to the statement that you made about building a brand, I don't think that started today either. It started years ago. I mean, even now when you go to a networking event, people say, well, what do you do? They want to know your job title, to size you up, to understand how much money you're making and all of those things. And so to me, I think it is very important, like you mentioned, to decide who you are on the inside, because those titles can be taken away. And I also think that at the beginning of this interview, you touched on how your identity had to be sorted through once you finished doing pageantry. I think that's a lesson of pageantry, that you have that identification of, well, I can't just be this brand. At the end of the day, I also have to be a human. I have to decide what qualities I'm going to continue to present to the world. So I think that's beautiful.
At the end of the day, all of that fades away. And I'm so glad I walked through that in pageantry, because had I entered the influencer space without knowing that and having a solid foundation, knowing who I am, I think that would be really difficult for me right now.
And whose you are. Because you know that too. In all your direction. That's why I fell in love with her at the Greenery and Co. salad shop over salads. I'm like, yes, this girl gets it. She's my soul sister. Like, welcome to the Nashville influencer community, because you are a breath of fresh air for sure. You. How do you stay motivated to continue to work and make smoothie bowls and take care of yourself mentally and physically and travel the world? And she has a new boyfriend and she's living her best life with him. How do you stay motivated to do it all?
I'm not always motivated. I'll start with that. But for me, I have to prioritize rest. And that might seem a little backwards when we're talking about productivity. But if I don't prioritize rest, then I can't be productive, and I am not motivated. And so sometimes, especially when my schedule is busy and I've been traveling a lot, I just have to take days off. I have to take time to do something that will fill my soul, whether that's going on a walk or just sitting in stillness or getting together with my friends or watching a Disney movie. Like looks different every time, but the more I prioritize being at rest, the less stressed I am, the more I feel like my brain is able to create, because it's really hard to consistently create and pour out all that creative energy
I
when
can't
you're
even
under
remember
pressure.
a sentence. If I'm tired, I'm like, I cannot interview you. I just like my brain, the brain fog is at an ultimate level when you're a creator, because you're like, I can't even set up whatever I'm doing right.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Rest for me is really, I'm not great at it, but I'm working on it and being better at making it a priority.
Do you take days for rest when you're traveling?
I try to. It looks different. Like if I know I'm going to be gone for 3 days and it's 3 days over the weekend when I normally rest, then I might rest on a Monday or I might rest on a Wednesday. Sometimes I have to adjust what that looks like. But most of the time for me, travel is restful. So that often refuels me as well.
Yeah. Well, I love that you're taking rest and taking some time for yourself, and that you're taking time for love too. I love that for you. He seems like a sweetie.
He's the best.
What's your response to creators buying engagement or just going and doing all the things in order to keep up with algorithms? What's your response to that?
I don't think it lasts. I don't think it is an effective way to build a brand or a company, because they're not real and loyal, engaged followers who are invested. I think if you're trying to build something that is long term, that can be harmful. I personally wouldn't do it, but I know a lot of people that do, or a lot of people think that that's going to be what makes their business. And so it makes me again question why are you doing this?
And that's one of the reasons why I wanted to address it, because it's always the elephant in the room that nobody addresses. It's the one part of influencer marketing that no one addresses. People are they want to shy away from it, but everything you see on the internet is not real. And I also want people to know that about influencer analytics and even brands. I would love for brands to take a deeper dive into who they're working with and actually asking for authentic analytics. Like, where is this person's demographic? If they live in Nashville and they do work in Washington and they're there for a significant amount of time and they have community on the ground, boots on the ground, I just wonder, are brands taking the time to actually dive through some of these analytics sometimes? Because to me, I can look at an account and tell when it's not necessarily the most authentic account. And as a fellow creator, it does kind of bother me when I'm putting in the amount of work that I put in for it all. Yeah.
To me, it just seems like scratching an itch to feel affirmed and to feel significant in the space when maybe that's not happening right now.
No. And it also makes me feel like I would never get on stage and perform for an audience that's not there. So the amount of work that goes into it to create this content, I'm just not going to do it for an audience that isn't really there. I don't care if it's 100 people or 3 people that are watching this video. We have 3 audience members here, by the way. Aaron and crew. But I just feel like I wanted to address it because no one ever talks about it. Well, people talk about it in private, but no one talks about it in public. I've watched documentaries on it. HBO did a documentary a few years ago on these people that were like faking their photo shoots. They were renting sets in LA to look like they were on private planes. Last night I watched another documentary on Anna Delvey, the German heiress, and the fraudulent things that she was doing to keep up on social media. And I just wanted to address it because I feel like these are very real things that we're all facing, and as influencers we're contending with it.
It also doesn't mean that you're making more money. I mean, you've got some micro level influencers or influencers with a quarter of the following of some of these macro mega influencers, and they're doing laps around these bigger accounts in brand deals because they actually have an engaged audience who will click the link and buy the product and convert sales. Just because you have 12 million followers doesn't mean you're making any money.
Absolutely.
I can look at an account and pretty much tell how much money they're making based on their brand deals and how they're posting.
Well, and their production quality.
You know, and I know enough now being in the industry and seeing contracts and working with brands and knowing how they hire to know how much money these people are making. Not completely, but like you can tell.
Get an idea.
Yeah.
No. I get it. You get an idea of it. So do you ever feel like you experienced any pressure from social media?
Of course. Yeah, it's always going to be there. But I think I have to be really diligent to not let that get to me because I decide what I let into my mind. And so I've had to get a lot more intentional about taking my thoughts captive and not letting the pressure affect my life, because at the end of the day, like we said before, it's social media. It should be fun. And I don't want to ever get to a place where it's decreasing my quality of life.
Yeah. And essentially we're all just supposed to be sharing each other's stuff. It's a social network for a reason. And I want to get back to that because I feel like it's all about the money. It's all about becoming an influencer. It's all about, to a certain extent, that's what's being marketed. But essentially we're supposed to be having fun and sharing what we love with other people. So here's a fun question. Is it more important to keep up with social media trends like dances or challenges, or techniques like posting 3 or 4 times a day, or posting more video content? So trends or techniques?
I think it's a blend of both. I think it's helpful to just be in the know of what's working and what people are wanting and posting, because of the way the social media apps are changing to be more of search engines like Google. I think you have to look at what questions are people asking and who's providing the answers. Because if a bunch of people are searching how to make salmon and nobody's creating content on how to make salmon, guess what? If you post a video on how to make salmon, you are now the answer to this question.
Yeah.
And so if you are just creating random content that nobody's searching for, it might be harder to grow. And I'm not saying you make sure every single piece of content is strategic in that way, but you can make some of it strategic in that way.
Back to your why, you want to be the answer to somebody's question.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So you traveled around the world. What's your number one travel tip for people?
Ooh. I think remember that travel is such a privilege and such a luxury. Even if you're not spending a lot of money doing it, it is a privilege. And I encourage people to do something that you wouldn't do when you're at home. Because what's the point if you always order a Caesar salad? When you go to New Zealand, why would you order a Caesar salad?
Yeah.
Get something you couldn't get at home. Like, you're in New Zealand, experience it, fully immerse yourself in that culture and get the most out of it, because our world is such a beautiful place. And if you go around the world, but you only ever do the same things you do at home, what's the point? I think the beauty of that is like learning about different places, trying new foods, trying new things, wearing different things, meeting new people.
What's been your fondest trip?
Oh my gosh, that question is impossible to answer.
I know it's hard because you've been so many fun places.
I would say internationally, in my top 5 are New Zealand, Italy, Israel, and Egypt.
Okay. Egypt looked like it was an incredible time.
So incredible.
Yeah.
The Middle East is a very different culture. So if you're not prepared for that, that could be a very big culture shock. But I had been to Israel before, so I was familiar with the Middle East. And there's just so much history in Egypt, and I'm a history nerd. So I watched so many documentaries and read so many books before I went. So that helped me appreciate what I was seeing more, because I knew a little bit about it.
Yeah.
And I just could not wrap my head around, being at the pyramids and things that have been there for so many years.
And did you work with any brands on your Egypt trip?
I didn't. I think the hotel that I stayed at, I did work with them a little bit, but other than that, I just planned the trip on my own. And
well, I think it's important as content creators to also take trips and do things that aren't necessarily sponsored, even if you do have a lifestyle
100%.
blog. Yeah.
And even sometimes my agent reminded me of this the other day, and it was like eye-opening for me, because I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. She's like, you can just take a trip, Nicole. She's like, when you go, you don't have to make a TikTok. You don't have to vlog it. You can just take a vacation and enjoy your time with your family and friends. And I was like, oh, I kind of forgot about that, because I'm the type of person that wants to make the most out of everything.
Yeah.
So if I'm somewhere new, I'm like, well, this is an opportunity for content.
Yeah.
And I forget that I could go on a trip and not even bring my camera, and that would be okay.
Yeah, and that will be okay. But as content creators, you get into the routine of it. So it is hard to let it go, for sure. So to the next generation of career seekers, is influencing a sustainable career path?
Ooh, I think it depends on
I'm asking you the hard ones at the end.
I think it depends on what lane you're in, truly. I kind of go back to what I was saying before about you can't plan for it to happen. If it does, that's incredible. Run with it if you want to, but it is hard to force it to happen.
Yeah.
And so it is difficult to get high paying brand deals if you don't have a loyal, engaged community. If you do, amazing, but that's hard. And that takes time. It's hard to build. So again, I go back to if you aren't willing to put in the work, don't do this.
Yeah.
Not to be discouraging, but
No,
because
I
it's
feel
hard.
No, it is hard, but law is hard. Becoming a doctor is hard.
Right. So pick your hard.
Yes,
I guess is what it comes down
Becoming
to.
a videographer is hard.
Yes.
So yes. Okay, one last question. What's next for you? And then I'm going to let you get on your plane to Disney.
Yeah, well, I'm going to Disney tomorrow. I'm very excited about that. I have a couple more fun trips planned this summer. It's a busy summer, actually, but I'm in the process of manufacturing my own line of coconut bowls because I do smoothie bowls, obviously. So I'm going to be coming out with those and some spoons and start to sell my own products, which is very exciting. Hopefully
that is exciting. Congratulations.
But yes, I'm so excited. My whole website and branding, all of that is getting a makeover too. So in the next couple of weeks, we'll have new website, new everything. And I'm excited for the refresh.
Well, congratulations, Nicole.
Thanks.
I think everything you're doing is great. And it's obvious that you have worked every ounce of your body and soul and mind towards all your goals and aspirations. So you are doing an incredible job.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming to the Sweet House.
Thank you for having
sharing
me.
all your sweetness with us.
Thank you.